the fruits of this memorandum of understanding.
All right, that was Tukoswa President Begi Mamba elaborating further on the MOU signed between Business Eswatini and Tukoswa. After the break, we're joined by Sandiswa for today's financial markets. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're still tuned into Nedbank Business Watch. Thank you for staying with us. We're now joined by Sandiswa Dlamini from Nedbank Eswatini for today's markets analysis. A very good afternoon, and of course, thank you for joining us today. President Donald Trump is making headlines since his inauguration on Monday, and markets are definitely reacting. What changes has he made that affect us the most as Eswatini?
Good afternoon, Lulu, and good afternoon to your viewers at home. So, as you have rightfully said, Donald Trump took office on Monday during his inauguration. And the first thing he did, obviously, was to sign a lot of orders, executive orders, of which there were close to 200. And of those 200 executive orders, over 40 were reversing policies from the previous president, Joe Biden. And he also focused a lot on immigration. There was also a lot of focus on tariffs. But the biggest impact that is going to definitely shake the global markets, it's the tariffs. So these tariffs that he's imposing mainly to China, which is usually the prime target. But unfortunately, this time we are seeing Europe also being targeted. We are also seeing Canada and also Mexico. And this is not usual because we consider Europe and Canada the U.S. closest allies. So that's have been a bit of a surprise. And so the dollar had reacted to the news of Donald Trump signing all these orders, and they have been digesting this news because it's a lot to unpack if you understand the scale of 200 executive orders. So just for context, in his previous term, he had only signed 220 orders in his whole term, and just yesterday, like on Monday, he signed close to 200 in one day. So these have been a big change, and there's a big impact in the markets.
Business.
Yes.
Right, still on Trump, I did report that he unveiled a $500 billion AI plan. Tell us more about that.
So pertaining the 500 billion, this is to target artificial intelligence infrastructure in the US. So he announced that there will be a partnership there will be OpenAI involved, there'll also be Oracle involved, there'll also be SoftBank. So we have seen a big impact of these announcements on equities, whereby SoftBank increased their stock price by 10%. We've seen Oracle increase by 4%. We also so rallies around tech companies. But unfortunately, this wasn't the case for Apple because they have some issues in China whereby they are experiencing low sales. So the news for that negatively impacted Apple. But as for the other companies, they have seen quite increases. Just to also highlight a few, we also have Netflix, who increased by over 15%. This increase was due to their market in terms of membership paid. It surpassed 300 million, and there is also these membership have been attributed mostly to Squid Game, which was released just recently. So that have seen an uptick on the memberships in Netflix. Okay. So we also have seen an increase in the stock price of United Airlines planes, and I think it's because of the accidents that have happened in the past. They have been facing challenges, and Boeing was also involved in a lot of submissions to the U.S. Congress. But United Airlines increased because they had a very good fourth quarter last year, of which they seen this led to positive outlook into 2025, which saw their stock increase by around 3%. So these have positively impacted the S&P 500. The FTSE also benefited, and the JSE All Share also increased, but not as much.
All right, so let's just take a look at currencies today and see how the Lila Engin is trading against the US dollar today.
In terms of currencies, the Lilangeni and the Rand have been appreciating steadily over the past couple of days. And in SA today, there was publication of the inflation data, of which we saw the inflation hitting 3%, coming from 2.9. But the expectation from the markets was that the inflation is going to go as high as 3.2%. So this have seen an appreciation of the Rand to 18.4652, and against the euro it's at 19.3051. Against the GBP it's at 22.8320. So then the inflation numbers, the expectation was that inflation is going to increase to 3.2. So in South African monetary policy, they target its inflation targeting. So they target inflation to be between 3% and 6%. But as we can see now, it's at the lower end, which means as long as inflation is low, the chances that interest rates are going to be cut increase. So there is an outlook that interest rates are going to be cut probably by 25 basis points in the next cycle, which is next week. So next week, the SAP is going to announce their decision on interest rates.
Okay.
And in Europe, Europe is also facing a lot of pressure. Unfortunately, these tariffs, since they are also targeting Europe, the euro have also seen a lot of pressure. That's why it's also not doing so well compared to the dollar. And this is the same case with GBP. Unfortunately, also in the UK, they are facing a lot of unemployment rate. At this point, they published their numbers that their unemployment rate have increased to 4.5% in December. And another issue they have, it pertains to their debt. So they have released their numbers that their debt to service is currently at 100 billion, which is quite high. And this raises concern of a death spiral, whereby now they have to take more debt in order to try to service this current debt. So their currency is also under pressure. Last week it was at just above 23, but it have receded to 22.8320, which is a big decline.
Okay, so moving on to commodities, you've been highlighting that inflation is low. So how is gold, Brent, crude oil reacting today?
Thank you for that question. Under normal circumstances, when inflation is low, usually investors move to equities and other investments because gold is always seen as a safe haven. Unfortunately, at this time, with President Trump getting into office and his policies that he have proposed, they are inflationary. So, which means because he's increased tariffs, which are going to make it harder for American business to import, because now they have to pay more to sort of get the goods into the United States. Now that will lead to inflation inside the US, which will definitely overflow, because we have seen Europe and other countries that proposing that they'll also retaliate, which means there will be tariffs also against US goods. But in this case, the odd thing is that the price of gold have increased, the demand for gold have increased, and this is coming from the fact that inflation is expected to increase, so people are already stocking up on gold. And in previous weeks, we've also seen that central banks are also in that pursuit of stocking up on gold. So these policies being inflationary means that the price of gold, the demand for gold have already increased, and even though inflation is still quite low.
Yeah, Trump is definitely shaking things up. So let's just quickly take a look at equities this afternoon, Sandy. So what's happening there?
Yes. So in terms of equities, as I've previously highlighted, the equities are all up. The S&P 500 is trading at 6,049.24. The FTSE is at 8,548, and the JSE All Share is at 84,845. These are all quite significant increases, and in terms of the FTSE index, they released their CPI data from last week, which indicated that their inflation is currently at 2.5%. These have led to an 81% chance of a 25 basis point cut next week. So the Bank of England is also announcing their interest rate decision next week. So there is a lot of pressure for them to cut interest rates. And for JSE, it has also increased, but not as significant as the S&P and the FTSE index. And this is because South African companies have an exposure to China, and at the moment, with the tariffs in place and the talks of tariffs, the tariff threat, this means that those companies, especially the Chinese companies, are currently not doing so well. So as much as there is an increase, it's just not as significant as the other equities.
All right. Thank you, Sandiswa, for your analysis. And that's it for our last segment of the program. It's 2 minutes before 3 o'clock. We quickly go for an ad break and we come back and wrap up the show with Sfiso.